Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Lunchtime Discovery Series. It's great to be with you for another Wednesday afternoon program right here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I'm your host, Chris Smith, the coordinator for current science programming here at the museum. And as always, it's great to be with you because the Lunchtime Discovery Series is a great opportunity. We have so much fun meeting interesting people, learning about interesting things happening in the world of science and nature, conservation, art, education, all of the above. And so today is going to be no different. It's good to be with you. Now, this program is coordinated and organized by the folks at the North Carolina Office of Environmental Education within the Department of Environmental Quality. Look at that, 2 government agencies getting something cool done. I like that. And they help us bring you this show every single week. Now, for the month of March is Women's History Month. And so they put together an incredible slate of programming featuring just fascinating people doing really, really cool work. Today is no different. We've got a very special guest for you to celebrate with us and to give light to some very important topics. Birds. Well, okay, maybe not birds so much as getting folks out to enjoy birds, to see birds, learn about birds, and making sure that the activity, the hobby, the profession of birding and enjoying birds is available to anyone and everyone. And so to that end, I want to introduce you all to the coordinator and occupational therapist for an organization called Birdability, Freya McGregor. Hi, Freya.
Hi, Chris. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm excited to share a little bit with you today about birdability. My name is Freya. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. So as Chris said, I'm the Birdability Coordinator and Occupational Therapist, and Birdability is a brand new nonprofit. We're just a year old. You might be hearing my accent. We're based in the US. I'm originally from Australia, but we're based in the US, and we're all about ensuring that birding is for everybody and everybody. So what do you see in this photo? Now, if you are blind or have low vision, or you have some visual disabilities, or you just can't look at the screen right now, I'm going to verbalize everything that comes up on the screen so you won't miss any information. By the way, I won't be able to look at the chat while I'm presenting to you, but at the end, I would really love if you have an access challenge that impacts your ability to go birding or to be outside in nature and you wanted to share about it, don't feel obliged, but if you would like to, I would really love to hear your thoughts as I go through this presentation, and if you'd like to share your experiences as well, please feel free, but not obliged. So in this photo, I see 6 people. They're all white. There's 5 people are in manual wheelchairs. Manual wheelchairs are those that are self-propelled or someone can push you. 2 of them are kind of more heavy duty, like off-road wheelchairs, the 2 on the right. There's a standing person. It's really important to keep in mind that not all disabilities are visible. Everyone has binoculars and they're all kind of looking through them. We're going to assume they're birding, probably because this presentation is called Birdability, but binoculars aren't necessary to be a birder or to enjoy birds, right? They're just a tool. We'll talk more about that later. It looks like they might be on an accessible trail. We can only see a small piece of it, so that's not a good amount of information to make that assessment, but the trail is concrete, it is wide, and it is flat, and these are all really good markers of what might be an accessible trail. In fact, it is an accessible trail. I've been there. This photo was taken at Sweetwater Wetlands in Tucson, Arizona. Very, very cool place. Very, very birdy. So what do we know? We know that time spent in nature is good for us. There's a growing body of evidence that supports this statement. We know that spending time in nature can help decrease stress and increase feelings of relaxation and increase our attentional capacity. That's really cool. It's like how much brain space we have to focus on something. Spending time in nature helps with that. We know that birds can be the gateway to spending time in nature. They make all kinds of bizarre noises. They have outrageous feathers. They can fly. I mean, wild. And so for a lot of people, birds are that prompt, that reason to go out into nature and get all those health and wellness benefits. We know that birding is the fastest growing leisure activity in the US, and this data is 22 years old, but in the year 2000, 85 million Americans were enjoying wild birds, and that number has grown significantly in the last 2 years as more and more people found themselves kind of stuck inside and started noticing what all this good stuff was that was just outside their doors. And we know that birding has the potential to be inclusive and accessible, but there's quite a bit of work to make sure that that is in fact true. And we're going to talk about some of that today. We also know that 1 in 4 Americans has a disability. 1 in 4, it's a lot of people. It's the largest minority, and it's the only one you can join at any time. Of those 1 in 4 Americans, 20 million have a mobility challenge and 7 million are blind or have low vision. And I know low vision sort of seems really vague in a general English sort of way, but my clinical background as an occupational therapist is in blindness and low vision services. And low vision is sort of the point at which glasses no longer help you see. There's lots of different eye conditions that can cause low vision, like you might have heard of macular degeneration maybe, or of cataracts. You know, if they're not removed, you still have some vision, but the glasses aren't helping anymore. So yeah, this is about our future selves. Really important to keep this in mind. This is not a conversation about an us and a them. This is about everybody. So our mission at Birdability is to share the joys of birding with people who have disabilities and to ensure birding is accessible to everybody. There's 3 spokes of our work, and like a wheelchair's wheel, it keeps rolling on and these things keep feeding into each other. So we want to address the physical accessibility of birding locations. We want to empower our welcoming and inclusive birding community. And we want bird clubs, we want museums, we want Audubon chapters and state parks and birders of all kinds to reach out and introduce people with access challenges to birding. We focus on people with mobility challenges, blindness or low vision, chronic illness, intellectual or developmental disabilities, mental illness, and those who are neurodivergent, deaf or hard of hearing, or who have other health concerns. But inherently, our work can positively impact parents with strollers. That's a mobility challenge, y'all. Grandparents with toddlers, older people slowing down, people with new medical diagnoses, folks with dodgy knees. That's me. I woke up one morning 3 years ago and I couldn't straighten my right knee. My summer, I was hoping to be hiking up the White Mountains of New Hampshire that summer. We lived in Boston at the time and I couldn't walk more than a mile without a lot of pain. So those plans were dashed. My knee's a lot better now, but it's not perfect and it never will be. And it does create some access challenges for me when I'm trying to go birding. So again, this is about our future selves. I also want to be birding and outdoors when I'm 95 years old, right? Don't you? So again, this is a conversation about everybody. Virginia Rose is the founder of Birdability, and she's a retired high school English teacher who lives in Austin, Texas, and has been birding for 20 years. But when she was 14, she was in a horse riding accident. She fell off a horse and she had a T10 spinal cord injury, so sort of about the waist level of her spine. And so as a result of that, she can no longer use or feel her legs. And so she uses a manual wheelchair to get around. She discovered birding, but she kept running into all these difficulties. She still does, runs into all these difficulties. Parking can be challenging. Yes, she drives. She has a modified vehicle that has hand controls, so she doesn't use the brake or the accelerator pedal. So parking's really difficult sometimes. Gates can be a real challenge. There are lots of different designs of gates and they are not necessarily accessible. And even though Virginia is able to scooch in under this kind of a gate, not everyone can do that. Bathrooms, there's a lot that goes into that. Steps and curbs, Virginia will tell you that one small step can be one small step. It's just one step. That can be the difference for her, being able to access that place independently or needing some help. And she will tell you that being unattended in nature is where the magic happens. Yeah, okay, she can get help, but it's not the same thing as being out there by yourself, you know, enjoying enjoying the world without needing assistance. Railings on safety barriers. There are many ways to design a railing, or a safety barrier, I should say. Most of them, unfortunately, seem to use a big plank of wood and rotate it so that it's creating the biggest possible visual obstruction for someone sitting in a wheelchair. Not ideal when you're trying to find birds. Mud and sand, really difficult to navigate through in a wheelchair. And she's in Texas, so cattle guards, cactus spines, and cow patties. She's out there adventuring all over the place. And she'll tell you that cow patties on your boots are one thing, but cow patties on your wheels, and so on your hands, and so on your optics are quite another thing. All of these things independently and cumulatively create a lack of independence for Virginia and for a lot of people with different access needs. And again, this independence is really important. There's so much empowerment that can be had when you're able to do something by yourself. As Virginia says, difficulty and uncertainty lead to empowerment and joy. And that's what kept bringing her back to birding. So many joys, learning, friendships, travel opportunities. This photo is taken of Virginia at McGee Marsh, which during the biggest week in American birding, a big bird festival in Ohio, that we'll actually be at together, both Virginia and myself, in May this year. So if you're going to be at the biggest week, please come say hi. We'll be leading outings and a workshop there. Physical health benefits, just moving your body and all that good stuff. Confidence, figuring out stuff she didn't think she could. Independence, community. Oh, there's so many good things that come out of being part of a community of people with similar values and similar interests. A purpose, a thing to look forward to on the weekend. And of course, the birds themselves. I mean, birds are awesome, right? So all these things create so much empowerment. But Virginia realized that she'd never seen anyone else using a wheelchair out on the trail. And she thought, I wonder if people just don't know that there are so many joys of birding they could get. Maybe they don't realize that they too can be birders. And that is how Birdability came about. A really important thing to note, Virginia is a manual wheelchair user, but we're talking about all kinds of disabilities and other health concerns, and disability is really diverse. There are lots of different kinds of disabilities. Even people within the same kind of diagnosis have all kinds of different access needs. Not every manual wheelchair user can't use their legs, for example. There's lots of people who use manual wheelchairs who can also walk. Even one person can have different access needs depending on the day, especially if there's a whole stack of different chronic illnesses that the symptoms just really vary. And one day they might be using a power wheelchair, the next day they might be using a walking frame because they're able to walk that day with that assistance. So this is really, really important. We're talking about a really broad group of people and a really broad group of access needs. So birding locations. Trails, bird blinds, observation platforms, feeder stations, even car birding sites. There's lots of different considerations to help determine if that place really is accessible. I don't have time to talk about them all today, and I don't have time to talk about all the other things I want to talk to you about today. So on our website, birdability.org, there's a lot more information about all this stuff, and there's a link at the bottom of each slide that gets you to the page, to the right page to find out more. So some of the big access considerations. Parking, we mentioned this. Now, not everyone drives, not everyone can drive. So public transport and other ways to get to the place, really important. If you can't get there, you can't enjoy it, right? But parking, you've probably seen accessible parking spaces. There are also van accessible parking spaces, and these spaces have an access aisle. It's like an extra bit on the side. You can see it in this photo with those diagonal lines. That is because a lot of people, including Virginia, drive wheelchair accessible vehicles that have a ramp that come out the side of the vehicle. If they haven't got enough space to deploy that ramp and enough space to get on and off the ramp at the end, they can't get in or out of their vehicle. If you take nothing else away from this presentation today, please, please, please never park in the access aisle. It's not a parking space. It's not a motorbike parking space. It's not a place to leave your shopping cart. That's a really important access feature, and you can really mess someone's day up if you park in that space. Please keep it clear and tell other people you know as well. Finding out trail information ahead of time is a really, really important thing for a lot of different people. Many bird outings, they'll say, oh, it's an easy outing. What easy? What easy for who? Like the super fit marathon runner? Like who are we talking about? What's easy? That's so subjective. Or the the nature center might say on their website, we have an accessible trail. It's half a mile long. And you're like, that's great. What else does it have about it that makes it accessible? It's not enough detail. We're talking about these access considerations, and this kind of information is really what we want to see in outing event descriptions, on websites of places that you can go birding for all of the trails, not just the ones that are deemed accessible. Disability is diverse, right? Everyone has different access needs. And we want to see this information on trail signs too, at the start of every trail. This sign, a lot of these photos taken at my favorite accessible trail at Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. This trail is phenomenal. This sign has really clear information about the length of the trail, the surface, the tread width, really important, especially if you have a mobility challenge and you're using some kind of mobility device. You need to be able to pass people safely and not be forced off the trail, because you might not be able to get back onto the trail. The gradient, the steepness, the slope, really important. And the cross slope. The cross slope is how much of an angle you're on as you're traveling down that trail. And again, that's particularly important for people using mobility devices and people with balance issues and things like that. The really awesome thing about this trail is that every time another trail intersected with it, there was the same information provided at a sign, and the paved portion of the trail ended and a dirt trail continued, and it had this same information at that intersection. Now, me and my dodgy knee, I still was figuring out, it was getting better. I could walk a lot more, but I was still figuring out what it could and couldn't manage. And it was because this information was at that intersection where the trail continued on as dirt. And I had this information. I was like, I think I could manage that. Like it's not that steep. It seems like I think I could have a go, and I did, and it was great, and I could, and I didn't know I could until I tried. And there were so many birds. There's indigo buntings everywhere. It was such a great day, and it was all because I was provided with this information. So this information gap, we're trying to do something about it, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Bathroom accessibility. Most people need bathrooms. We're humans, but some people need bathrooms much more frequently than others, especially folks with different health concerns. And the accessibility, like any built structure, there's lots of different components that make it accessible or not. Door width, if there's an accessible stall, how big it is, how much circulation space there is, grab bars, is the sink low enough that someone who's seated can manage it, are the taps easy to turn on and off without much finger dexterity? Can you reach the toilet paper dispenser when you're sitting on the toilet? That's not a joke. True facts. Not always can you do that very well. While we're here, this photo was taken at this same trail. Portaloos. There's regular size portaloos and there's accessible portaloos. I don't need an accessible portaloo, but given the option, I would rather use one because they're just a bit bigger. They don't seem as cramped. They're never as hot and stuffy in the summer. They're not quite as smelly, I think. Everyone can use an accessible portaloo, but only some people can use a regular size portaloo. When you build things with access in mind, everyone can benefit, not just the people that you think you're serving. It's really important to keep that in mind. Interpretive signs. This goes to museums too. Interpretive signs, we want to see large print. We want to see really strong contrast between the text and the background. We want to see tactile components, things you can touch, maybe not during COVID, but, hand sanitizer. That top right corner, there's a kind of mock-up of a sycamore tree bark. The sign's talking about the floodplains, and there's all these big sycamores, and you can feel that. Now, you might think that someone who's blind or has low vision would benefit from that tactile component. Yes, totally. And a bunch of other people, kids, People like me, I just like touching things. It's the way I learn, doing stuff. Maybe older people, maybe they've got dementia and they're not going to read all that stuff, but they can get something out of it by feeling something. People who don't read English, it's not their first language, but they can still learn something. There's an engagement opportunity there. People with print disabilities, again, with access and inclusion, it's really cool. Even if you think you're only putting in this access feature for one group of people, there's usually a lot more people who will benefit from this. We really want interpretive signs to be connected to the trail by a paved surface. Sometimes they're like 6 feet over there. That doesn't help if I have to move over the muddy grass that I can't manage. It's got to be next to the trail or connected to the trail by a paved surface like this sign at a height that someone seated can read, like this sign. And then another really, really awesome thing is having audio description available. Museums and some trails will have, the visitor center will have like an iPod or, a wand thing, and you can like press the button and, listen to it. That's great. In the context of birding locations, that's great if the visitor center's open. Maybe not on a Sunday afternoon, right? Or here, the visitor center is like 5 miles away. Like I'm not driving 5 miles and coming back again, So yeah, that it's really good, but it might not be the perfect solution. Another option is having a QR code that you can scan with your smartphone, and it will pop up and then read aloud what's on the sign, which is also great if you have a smartphone, if you can afford a smartphone. If you have battery, if you have reception, there's no reception at Mammoth Cave. There is none in the whole park. There is no reception. So that's not a good option there. And it's not a good option for everybody. Everybody can't access that necessarily. The thing next to that sign is a little pillar, and it has a solar panel. It's always open. It's always available. And you just press the button and it reads aloud the text on that sign. It's really, really cool. And again, so many more people than the people that you probably think will benefit from this access feature. Maintenance is really important. No matter how accessible your birding location is when it's first built, if you do not maintain it, it will not stay that way. Shrubs and trees can encroach on the trail, and if it's taking up space, like width on that trail and reducing that trail width, there's people who won't be able to get through that space. Branches, low-hanging branches or trunks that kind of come across the trail, someone who's sighted will probably not even think, and they'll just dodge it. But clocking your head on a tree trunk if you're blind or have low vision, like that's not fun. It's a legitimate safety concern. Leaves, big thick carpets of leaves in the fall, sometimes they can create a slip hazard if they're all wet, for anybody, but also they can be so thick that someone with gait difficulty or using a mobility device might not be able to move through those leaves. And snow, not always relevant depending on where you are on the planet, but definitely creates an access issue. And of course, places can't necessarily plow like every morning after a snowfall, sure, but what they can do is, if there is a place where there's regular snow, share the plowing schedule on the website, because if the place only plows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings as needed, and it snows on Friday night, I know it's not worth driving 2 hours to this location on Saturday because it won't be plowed yet. So I can save myself a whole lot of irritation and have a successful visit next time I go, when I can access the place. Railings, you saw that photo of Virginia not really able to see through that railing height of the safety barrier. Now, we're all for safety barriers. Please have safety barriers. Don't fall off cliffs. This is important, but they can be designed in so many better ways to make it more accessible for lots of different people. Here at Mammoth Cave, this viewing area, I thought, oh my gosh, someone's like come and vandalized their fabulous new trail. Like, this is terrible. And I walked up closer to it and discovered that those two sections of that safety barrier are thick, clear perspex. Really cool. Still a safety barrier, but the little kids in strollers can see out. The toddlers can they don't have to look through those jail bars on the other parts of the safety barrier. Virginia could see everything that a standing person can see, and so can I, resting on that bench. Benches, we need more benches with armrests connected to the trail surface. Please, more benches. I can rest on that bench, rest my knee, and still see everything as well. We talked about steps before. Other obstacles might be roots or, boardwalk, planks sometimes, flick up and create a trip hazard. Sometimes there's big rocks. But again, disability is diverse. Both Virginia and myself have a mobility challenge, but I can manage a step. I can actually manage quite a few steps now. It's a different story for Virginia. It's a different story for someone using a power wheelchair who can't just pop a wheelie over a step. So this is why it's so important to have this detailed information, because everyone has different access. Everyone has access needs, by the way. It's just that most people with disabilities, their needs are not just met automatically. That's really important. We all have access needs, but the folks with access challenges have different kinds of needs. And so having this detailed information about all the trails, not just the accessible trails, is really, really important. And bird blinds, again, like any built structure, there's a few components, but the thing that I want to talk about here is the viewing windows. Some bird blinds, they only have windows that someone standing can see out of. Not everyone's that tall and not everyone is standing. So this bird blind I really love because it has that little window down the bottom at the height that someone seated could see out of. So now you know about some of the really important access considerations. There's quite a few more, by the way. Check out the Birdability website for more and about why they're important. But now you know about this. We are trying to plug that information deficit, that big gap, through the Birdability Map. This is crowdsourced. Anyone can contribute to it, even you, and you've already been kind of trained up a little bit on how to do this. You don't need training to do it, though. It's designed to be as straightforward as possible. This is worldwide, although many more sites have been pinned in the US, which is not surprising, seeing as that's where we're based. Every yellow diamond represents a reasonably accessible birding location that someone has submitted. To submit to the Birdability Map, you complete a Birdability site review. It looks like a lot. It's really not, though. It's just that there's lots of options. It's designed for you to just tell us what is there. You don't have to make any judgment calls. We don't want to hear anything like, oh, a wheelchair could manage that slope. How do you know? There's so many different people using different kinds of wheelchairs. You don't know them all. Don't make the judgment call. Let people decide for themselves. Just tell us what there is so that someone can make that decision. You can print this checklist out, but then come back to your computer and submit it to the Birdability Map, and it will populate the Birdability Map. And anyone can see this really detailed accessibility information ahead of time. You can also link directly to a site review on the Birdability Map, which is really helpful if you're including information about for a bird outing or something on your website. We do want you to include some of that really important detail in your bird outing event description too, but you can also link to the Birdability Map. The other thing that's important to mention with the Birdability site review is that if you're a birder or nature lover, you're probably already pretty good at observing stuff and reporting on what it is. So don't feel like you have to be, somehow qualified to submit a site review checklist. This is just something that we hope that anyone can do, and it's been designed specifically so that it's as easy as possible. And it's a really fun, really interesting learning opportunity, and a really great way to help us plug that information gap to help more people get outside and enjoy birds. There's a lot more information about this on the Birdability website if you want to learn more. So a slight change of gear here. I am on a mission to redefine birding as the act of enjoying wild birds. As broad and as simple as that. Now, I'm from Australia. My parents are birders. They call themselves bird watchers. So I did too growing up. I talked about bird watching, and I remember asking them a few years ago, why don't you, what's the deal with birding versus bird watching? Why do you say you're bird watchers? And they said, well, birding's all very well, but it's a very American word and we're not American. So we're just bird watchers. Fair enough. Totally fair enough. But you know what my clinical background is in, right? Blindness and low vision services. Not everyone watches birds, but you can enjoy birds by ear. most sighted birders bird by ear to some extent too, even if it's just, oh, what's that noise over there? Let me turn around and look. The other thing, another thing, I mentioned this earlier with that photo at the start, you don't need binoculars to enjoy birds. They're just a tool. It's not necessary. Not everyone can afford binoculars. Not everyone can use binoculars. People with difficulties with their arms or hands or shoulders might not be able to hold binoculars up. In fact, someone told me that you're a birder if you identify birds. I am pushing back on that too. You don't need to know what a bird's called to enjoy it. It's still a fabulous bird, even if you don't know what everyone else calls it. Make your own name up. Like, does it matter? Only if you're trying to communicate with someone else about what bird you saw. So I hope that this definition will help include more people into the birding community. I know a lot of people have told me that they feel like now they can call themselves a birder, and before they didn't feel somehow qualified to do that. That's bizarre, by the way. Like, who's creating this qualification and this system of hierarchy where someone's not a real birder yet? Like, that needs to go. We've got to get rid of that. It doesn't help, and it doesn't help us be more welcoming and inclusive, and that's where we're going next. So it's really easy to do some word swaps. Take it from me, I've had to remove some of my Australian words from my language to be more clearly understood in America. It's really sort of annoying the first 2 or 3 times you have to remember, and then you just get used to it. And I think if we do these little word swaps, we can just make this hobby that much more welcoming and inclusive for beginner birders and for birders with different access challenges. So I invite you to consider swapping bird watcher for birder, and swapping bird walk for bird outing or field trip. Now, Virginia, who cannot walk, talks about bird walks. Everyone is always allowed to identify however they like. That's a really important message too when it comes to inclusion. But if the walking folks can start talking about bird outings or field trips, I'm so sure that there'll be a bunch of people who don't walk all the time or don't walk much, who might feel like they could come because it wasn't sort of kind of exclusionary in the way that the event was described. While we're on language, handicaps and impaired. Generally, these 2 words are seen as out of date and sometimes offensive by a lot of people in the disability community. There is nothing wrong with having a disability. Therefore, there is no shame in it. Therefore, it is not offensive to say that someone has a disability or is disabled. Now, again, everyone is allowed to identify as they like. And if you know someone who talks about themselves as handicapped, please don't say, oh, Freya from Birdability said that's rude. Gosh, please don't do that. People can identify however they like. But if you're talking about someone else and you are non-disabled, just say disabled. It's totally okay. Normal, though, is probably not a good one to use in this context. You probably mean someone is non-disabled or able-bodied or sighted or hearing or neurotypical. And while we're there, wheelchair-bound, definitely not a good phrase. It's really disempowering. It sort of implies that someone is restricted and confined and defined by their wheelchair, and they are nothing without that wheelchair. And like, what a kind of negative message to be sending. Let's not use that. The preferred phrase is someone is a wheelchair user. They just use a wheelchair, like I use a bike sometimes to get around, you know. And vision impaired, because we're moving away from impaired, vision impaired is less and less being used. And you just can say that someone is blind or has low vision. It's not enough to just think you're being inclusive. You have to be intentionally inclusive. This is really important. Being intentionally inclusive takes more effort, it takes more time, and sometimes it costs more money. Having an ASL interpreter like we have today, which by the way is very, very awesome, takes more effort and time to organize and costs more money to have that. But this is the difference between just assuming people know they're welcome and going out of your way to make sure that they know that you want them to come. Telling people in the program description an ASL interpreter will be provided or closed captions will be provided is a big signal. Hey, we want you here. You don't have to be concerned. You won't have to advocate for your access needs right now. We're telling you ahead of time, we've got it. Please come, we want you. So bird outing leaders, and any birder can do a whole lot of stuff to be more welcoming and inclusive. So here's a few ideas. This goes for educators, naturalists, museum stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we can do. It's not hard, but you have to be intentional to be more welcoming and inclusive. The first is smile and say hello to other birders. Seems really obvious, but the saying hello bit is really important. Not everyone will see you smile. People who are blind or have low vision might not see you smile. Someone who's not making eye contact because they might be a bit uncomfortable in the social situation, but they might hear you say hi. Like that's important. Include a welcome statement at the beginning of all outings and share your pronouns and some behavioral expectations. My pronouns are she, her. The reason sharing pronouns is really important is because folks who are non-binary and transgender, sometimes their appearance doesn't match up with their gender identity. And so you might misgender them, which can be really harmful. And it definitely very often an innocent mistake. But if you create an opportunity for people to share their pronouns, it can really make people feel really, really welcome and included. My pronouns are in my Zoom handle, they're on my Instagram account, they're on my email signature. And when I introduce myself, I say, hi, I'm Freya, my pronouns are she, her. Really, really easy. And it doesn't cause me any trouble. I just have to remember to do it. It has to be intentional. Welcome statement. This might sound something like, hi, I'm Freya. My pronouns are she, her. I'm really excited to be birding with you all today. Thanks for coming. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Or if you can't reach me, just ask someone nearby and they'll be happy to help. Hint, hint, everybody else. The other thing we really enjoy doing on our accessible outings that we hold is going around in a circle and inviting other people to share their names, their pronouns, if they feel comfortable. Some people don't want to share their pronouns, but if they feel comfortable sharing their pronouns, and if they have any access challenges, that it would be helpful for others to know. Not everyone wants to disclose their medical history. That's totally okay. You don't have to do that. That phrasing means you're not obliged to. But if it's helpful for everyone in the group to know, for example, that I'm deaf in my right ear, and if you want to talk to me, I need you to stand on my left, like that's a great opportunity to invite people to share their access needs and everyone at once, get it all done at once. And it's going to help that person who's hard of hearing to be more able to be included in that event. Don't single someone out because of the difference unless it is relevant. And if you do this, try and do it one-on-one. If someone shows up at your outing and they've got crutches, don't be like, oh guys, look, there's someone with a mobility challenge. This is so exciting. That's really awkward. Don't do that. Don't do that. But if you've got stairs coming up ahead, which hopefully you don't if you're holding an accessible outing, but if there are stairs, maybe you pull, at the back of the group, one-on-one to this person, not in front of everyone, say, hey, look, I see you using crutches. They know they're using crutches. That's not offensive. You're allowed to say that. I see you using crutches. There are some stairs. Let me know if you need a hand getting up them, or we can game plan something else. Totally appropriate. In fact, most people will really appreciate that you notice that they have access needs that may or may not be met, and they'll appreciate your thoughtfulness on that. Offer help, sure, but be prepared to graciously accept no. Not everyone needs your help and not everyone wants your help, but some people will really appreciate it. If you offer help and someone says, oh, yes, please, don't just launch in and assume you know what they need. Everyone has different needs and they're the experts on themselves. So the next question is, cool, what would you like me to help you do? Or how would you like me to help you? If they say no, I'm fine, thanks. Don't get all hoiked up about it. Oh, well, I was just trying to be nice. That's not cool. Don't do that. That's not cool. Just say, no worries. Well, I'll be around, so let me know if you need a hand. Believe someone if they identify a bird. A lot of Black, Indigenous, and people of color birders I hear have had this experience. I know a lot of women birders, young birders, beginner birders, disabled birders, birders with different accents like me. It's so disempowering and discouraging when someone automatically assumes you don't know what you're talking about because you're a little bit different to them. I have an Australian accent. I know quite a bit about North American birds. Like, why are you assuming I have no idea? Instead, a very small attitude adjustment of trust but verify is so much better. Oh, wow, an American redstart? That's cool. Let's see, and go have a look. And maybe it's not, sure. So then you can, kindly and encouragingly explain why that's a different species. But you know what? Maybe it is. So just assume they've got it right and then go trust but verify. And be actively anti-racist. This is really important. If I'm white and I'm straight and cisgender, if our work was only about white, straight, cisgender disabled birders, we would not be doing our job. That is not inclusion. Inclusion is, you should be trying to include everybody. Everybody has multiple identities. People who hold multiple historically marginalized identities often experience multiple systems of oppression. That's if you've heard the word intersectionality, that's what that's all about. Anti-racism is not the same as just not being racist. It's being really active in your own internalized biases and out in the world. I'm not the best educator on this, but there are so many resources online. To get you started, there is a page on the Birdability website about racism in birding. I encourage you to check out some of those things if you're interested in learning more about this. This is a big problem, folks. And yeah, again, anti-racism is not the same as not being racist. Please do some homework on this one if you haven't, but it's really important to really keep at the top of your head that there are Black wheelchair users and there are gay autistic people, so if you're going to be inclusive, you've got to be doing the whole job, not just the piece of it that is most comfortable for you. Don't force someone to opt out. Go out of your way to allow them to opt in. How does this look from a group or an organizational level? Well, welcoming and inclusive organizations can create an inclusion and diversity statement, which includes why this work matters to you and your organization and what you're going to do about it. Put it up on your website, make it publicly available, and use it to hold your employees and volunteers accountable for these actions going forward. Hold accessible bird outings as part of your regular programming. Don't just do it once a year. That's not enough. Do it regularly. Every month would be great. And include detailed accessibility information in the outing event description. There's a whole lot of information about what to include in that on our website. Include image descriptions for social media posts. A lot of people, especially people who are blind or have low vision or who have other print disabilities, use screen reader software, which reads aloud the text on a screen. It's totally great for emails and websites if they're screen reader accessible, which is another thing, but it can't read a photo. So alt text, alternative text is built into photos and images. If you do it, if you're intentional about it, you can build it in on websites and on social media. And you can also include an image description in the caption, which says, just in like plain language, what the photographic information is, because if you don't include that, you are forcing someone to opt out of accessing that information. There's more information on our website about image descriptions too. Include closed captions for all webinars and meetings, even if no one has asked for them. Again, kudos for having an ASL interpreter here today. Really, really cool. And I think we have captions as well. Although I have them turned off, I don't need them, but a lot of people do. And having to advocate, I think I said this earlier, having to advocate over and over and over again for your access needs is really exhausting. And some people just, you know what, it didn't say they have captions. I'm assuming they won't. Forget it. I just won't go. The other thing here is never ask someone to justify why they have made an accommodation request. Just trust people to tell you what they need. Why would they have asked for captions if they didn't need it? Certainly never do that publicly or debate with them their need for captions. That's awful. Don't do that, please. Please don't do that. Remove financial barriers to access whenever possible. It's not always possible, sure, but a lot of people, and by the way, disability is expensive, y'all, can't afford to attend programs that they would like to go. So if you can, or you could have some sponsorship or grant money that covers the cost, or you could have like a pay what you will type payment model that can help people participate. And provide honorariums for speakers or consultants. This is really important for writers too. This is really important. This is about equity. Expecting someone to provide educational or emotional labor to you for free is not fair. And especially if they're doing it in their free time. I mean, we've all got a limited amount of time, and it's not fair. It also demonstrates a real lack of respect for them and for what you're asking them to present on. It takes a lot of time to do this stuff, and you really need to demonstrate respect for them and what they're providing for you, the education that they're providing for you with an honorarium. Tell people up front too, we have a $200 honorarium available, you know, for this 1 hour presentation on whatever you're asking them to present on. And consultants, in this context, I'm talking about, you know, maybe you've been part of designing a new accessible trail, really awesome, you're really excited, and you're going to reach out to the local disability community and ask a few folks to come out and test it out and see if there's any more improvements you could make. Great idea. Do that thing. So good. As long as you pay those people, you got to pay them. This is their free time. Like, why should they care? You know, at least the minimum would be a $50 honorarium to cover gas or something, you know, like minimum. Some people will say, like with closed captions, they'll say, oh, well, it's not in the budget. Put it in the budget. It's not that hard. It's just part of programming costs. Get another grant, like just build this stuff in. This is really, really important. So we have a bunch of resources for birders with disabilities and other health concerns. You've heard about the Birdability Map already. We have a page on our website, really fun. I wish I had more time to tell you about different kinds of adaptive birding equipment, really, really cool, like wheelchair mounted scopes and things like that. We have a Facebook group if you want to join in, called the Birdability Birders. We have the Birdability blog. I love using it to amplify experiences of birders with access challenges. You can learn a lot reading the Birdability blog. There's people with similar access challenges might find some really important representation, we hope, and maybe some tips or tricks they hadn't thought about for their own birding. And people who don't share that access challenge will probably learn quite a lot, including about how to be a more welcoming, inclusive birder. We have virtual programs. You can bird from your computer. Don't know if you know that. Really cool. You know, like nest cams and feeder cams and stuff, really awesome. And we could do some virtual birding too, which is really, really fun. Bringing birds inside to people who might not be able to get outside or get out on trails today or this month or this year for various reasons. And we have a lot more coming. I have a lot more draft web pages, kind of a one-woman show over here. So there's a lot more coming on our website. So please check it out. You can sign up to our monthly newsletter. You'll find out about new resources there, or you can follow us on social media at Birdability. And this is really exciting. Birdability is entering a team to New Jersey Audubon's World Series of Birding this May. It's a big day, you know, like a competition where you try and find as many birds as possible within a 24-hour period. It's been going for quite a few years, this one, and it's the first time that a team of birders who all have access challenges will be part of this event. So it's really exciting. This is a fundraising effort for us. So if you would like to support Team Nuthatch, birdability.org/donate is where you can. As I said at the start, we're just a year old as a nonprofit. We are small, but we are mighty, and we have a lot of really important work ahead of us. So any donation is so appreciated. If you feel inclined, it really makes a difference to us, because birding is for everybody and everybody. My email address is info@birdability.org. Please send me an email if you'd like to connect. Like I said, kind of a one-woman show, so it may take me a few days to get back to you. My inbox is intense, which is great, just intense. And Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube @Birdability. Please give us a follow and keep learning more and sharing. You're always welcome to share those posts with anybody, because the more people who learn about this, the more people we have to support and to get more folks out birding. It's a good thing. And of course, the more people who we can invite to enjoy birds, the more people there will be to care for birds and the environment and act for conservation. So thanks very much. Chris, I can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, that's better.
All right, well, we're going to put that over there. Excellent stuff. Thanks, everybody. I'll invite everyone again to give you a great big digital round of applause wherever you happen to be, or you can drop little clapping hands emojis into the chat on YouTube or the comments on Facebook. And that's also where you can leave your questions and thoughts for Freya. And I'm going to turn to those in just a second. But Freya, I'm going to go all the way back to your very first slide where it noted that you have achieved the Certified Interpretive Guide, the CIG from the National Association for Interpretation, which I understand is part, there's your pin.
There's my pin.
Which is also, since this is part of the Environmental Education Network, the Office of Environmental Education, part of this EE certification for the state, one of the things you have to do can include the NAI certification program. So you can get your CIG and that can count towards your EE certification in the state. So I'm kind of, this might be like way left field of a question for you, but since you've gone through that process too, how do you integrate some of those CIG principles, developing an interpretive program or developing, let's say, a bird outing in this case, with the effort of birdability? Maybe my question is like, how do you improve the training or the thought process for somebody who's doing that specific interpretive role? And I know that a lot of our audience are also in that boat.
Sure. Yeah, good question. So I'm going to pull that back to a question I've had before about, should you retrofit something or should you design it to be accessible from the start? For program design, you can definitely, and this goes for trails, this would go for museum exhibits, you can definitely retrofit stuff. Please do that. Don't just leave it bad. Please make it better. Definitely. And program wise, from an interpretation standpoint, if you have a program you've been leading third graders on or something for a long time, I bet there's ways you could change the materials you use or change how you describe something or change the activities you're doing just so that they're a bit more maybe descriptive, or maybe the language you use is a bit more broad and not kind of focused, say, on seeing birds, but seeing and hearing birds perhaps. But there's a really cool thing, universal design principles, Google that, universal design, starting from scratch and building from the bottom up to be accessible and inclusive from the start. That's really, really awesome. It's cheaper too than retrofitting something that's only kind of so-so. But yeah, there's, the way you engage, maybe you're leading an outing, or you're taking a group of kids through a museum or something. There's really little ways you can just change your language to just, especially in birding, there's so much emphasis on seeing birds. And not everyone can see them, or not everyone can use binoculars and could see that little bird far away. If you're able to emphasize the birding by ear stuff just as much, you're going to be including a lot more people, not just the folks who are blind or have low vision, who, by the way, you might not know they're on your outing. Folks who have low vision, like it's one of those invisible disabilities often. If you can just modify your approach so that you're trying to make it as broad and as engaging for as many different people as possible, you'll be being inclusive, and your program and your event will be more accessible just by that. There's lots of, I talk a lot about birding and bird outings and stuff, but a lot of this stuff and a lot of the stuff on our website could be applicable to lots of different contexts, like interpreters and educators and stuff. So please check out our website, because there's heaps and heaps of stuff on there to help you do this. I don't know if that answered your question. I think it sort of answered your question.
That was brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you phrased it much better than I did, which was, should you retrofit something? Should you just start from the bottom and build it specifically considering everybody and everybody, one of those is going to be a better fit. Okay, let me turn to the chat because we got some questions who have popped up there for you. The first one comes from Carrie. Will there be a Birdability Week in 2022? I would love to host an event.
Yes, there will. Birdability Week was inspired by Blackbirders Week 2 years ago. If you haven't heard of that, check it out. There's links on our website. It was amazing event. It blew my mind for a lot of different reasons. And so, yeah, Birdability Week, there will be in October, the October 17 to 23, I think. Yeah, put that in your calendar. There's information on our website about what we did last year and the year before, if you want to see those events and stuff. And yeah, last year we invited anybody to hold an accessible outing in October to help us celebrate Birdability Week. So yes, please do that and keep holding them. Don't just do it in October. Keep doing it. But yes, definitely. Thank you for wanting to participate and be part of it.
There you go. Cool stuff. All right, the next one. With organizations like Birdability and social media efforts like #Blackbirders Week, do you think birds have become an important way to encourage equity and inclusion?
Yes.
It seemed to.
Well, the thing about birds is that, like I said in that early slide, it has the potential to be inclusive. Birding has the potential to be inclusive and accessible. Some of the barriers are just the people, some of it's the physical environment, some of it's the institutional environment, but the people can impact that. Birds are everywhere. They're everywhere. New York City, this huge, gigantic urban environment, there's peregrine falcons. I think it's the densest population of peregrine falcons in the world is in Lower Manhattan. Like, birds are everywhere, and people can get to birds, and you can hear them, you can see them, people engage with them in all different ways. Yeah, birds are an amazing tool to, and the cool thing about birds is that when people get really excited and passionate about sharing birds with other people, they want everyone to be able to share those joys. So they're a really, really cool tool to make a point about, shouldn't everyone be able to get this greatness out of these creatures? Like, just because I can, shouldn't everyone else as well? It's a really great point and a really great tool to kind of push the inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And the really cool thing, our work is focused on disability, but the really cool thing for us, and the same would go, I think, with a lot of like some of the education that I got from Blackbirders Week, is that, yeah, okay, we're talking about birding specifically, like, don't just push someone in a wheelchair unless they say yes, like that kind of stuff. That applies not just on the trail, but also at the supermarket and, at anywhere, like it's not just birding specific, so being anti-racist, you wouldn't only be anti-racist in birding, you would be anti-racist in all of your life. So yeah, birds are, that's what is so cool about this. Birds are such an awesome tool to pull people in, so that to get them excited, to pull even more people in, and then it spreads further. It's really awesome.
Yeah, excellent stuff. All right, let's see here. We have a classroom teacher, Pam, in the chat, who shared earlier, mentioning that they had students who were blind in their classroom or at their school. When you asked about access challenges, there at the top, but also has a question from a student. How would someone with one arm and a cane access birding?
Ooh, a cane and one arm. Great question. Well, so a cane, I'm assuming this is a long cane rather than a walking cane. A long cane, if you don't know, a long cane is something that a lot of people who are blind or have low vision use to help them know where they are and get around in space. So yeah, well, birding by ear, I mean, I know someone who, he's one of our volunteers actually. He's been totally blind since birth. He has two arms, but it doesn't really matter, his arms, because he's been birding by ear since like the 1970s. He's a bit older than I am. Birds make so many different calls, and birding by ear, you can learn which birds make which sounds, and it's actually, there's quite a lot of birds that look exactly the same, and it's only by their call that we can figure out which bird is which. So even for people who are sighted, like birding by ear is really valuable skill. So you can totally be birding by ear. Having one arm or two doesn't impact that, I don't think, at all. But send me an email if you'd like to like connect more about that, or talk some more. We have a page on our website about for birders who are blind or have low vision, so that might give you some ideas as well.
Excellent stuff. And I don't know, during the presentation, I was thinking about nature center administrators or any kind of site administrators, people who are looking at budgets and construction costs and things like that. And the idea perhaps that following the American Disabilities Act for, say, a building project is good enough. Mm-hmm. When it seems like so many of universal design principles so often go beyond that to actually incorporate the broad depth of humanity that it actually exists.
Right.
And I don't know if that's something that you could or would want to speak to actually finding the motivation, perhaps.
So
to go beyond.
The Americans with Disabilities Act standards have it's all for public buildings that are new to have things like ramps, and they have to meet a certain gradient, and you have to have there's all these specific things in the ADA standards that apply, but they don't cover things like trail design, or whether your benches should have armrests on them, or there's a whole lot of stuff. The ADA standards should be considered a bare minimum. They're not the be all and end all by any stretch. It's the bare minimum. And there's on our website, birdability.org, access considerations. That's the big page that tells you all about the stuff that we know about for all these different people with all these different access needs in birding locations, that may be relevant to whether they can access it or not. And a lot of some of that stuff we've pulled from the ADA, like the gradient for ramps versus slopes. But there's a lot of stuff in there, like noise. People who are hard of hearing, might not be able to participate on a bird outing if there's a lot of background noise, because they can't hear the people speaking. If the background noise is, some places next to airports, or there's a big lake and there's people roaring up and down on power. A remarkable amount of good birding spots next to gun ranges. If you have a trauma history, my husband's a combat veteran in the Army. Guns going off nearby, even if you are physically safe, might not feel that safe. And so that's not in the ADA, but it's an access consideration for sure. And so, it's a lot broader than the ADA standards. And they should be considered a bare minimum. It's hard to sort of know how to convince a nature center administrator that that's important. That you should want to include people. Surely though, maybe this is the way to do it. If you're an administrator of a nature center, the point of your job, the point of your location is to have people come and visit, right? So don't you want as many people as possible to come and visit? If so, you've got to make sure it's accessible so that everyone can come. Otherwise, you're only meeting the needs of a portion of the population and of the potential people you could be engaging in nature and conservation. If that doesn't get you, then I don't know what will.
Well, that's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Freya, thanks for being with us on the Lunchtime Discovery series today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Really appreciate you and the work that you're doing and Birdability. Folks can go and check out the website, get access to great resources. And everybody, don't forget, if you ever want to come back, this video will remain archived on the museum's YouTube channel right here at the same link, so you can always come back and take it in again if you want to get a refresher on some of these resources, or share it with friends, family, people in your network, enemies, doesn't matter. Get it out there and spread the word. Make sure that you're keeping up with the series online. You can follow the Office of Environmental Education on Twitter at North Carolina EE. and find out about more programs from the Environmental Education Office at their website, beenorthcarolina.org. And as always, we keep the museum's website updated with upcoming programs, including this one, naturalsciences.org. Next week, we'll be back here again Wednesday at noon Eastern with another Women's History Month presentation. We'll be talking to geneticist Heather Evans, who works for the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. Don't miss it. Conservation Genetics next Wednesday at noon. Until then, everybody, take care. Continue to stay safe and do what you can to keep your community safe. We'll see you again real soon. Bye, everybody.